Bikers mock a farmer's truck, then regret it when it calls home. In the heart of rural America, the small town of Oakville nestled among rolling hills and vast farmlands. The quiet roads and peaceful atmosphere made it a haven for those seeking a simpler life. But on this sunny afternoon, the tranquility was shattered by the roar of motorcycle engines as Troy Viper Maddox and his gang of arrogant bikers rode into town. Troy, a man in his mid-30s with a weathered face and a snake tattoo coiling around his neck, led the pack. He reveled in the power he felt as they cruised through the streets, their leather jackets glinting in the sunlight. The locals, accustomed to the gang's presence, kept their distance, knowing better than to cross their path. As they approached the town's only gas station, Troy signaled for his crew to pull over. They parked their bikes in a line, taking up most of the space near the pumps. The gang members stretched their legs and chattered among themselves, their laughter echoing across the lot. At that moment, an old farm truck pulled into the station, its faded paint and rusted exterior a stark contrast to the gleaming motorcycles. The driver, Earl Johnson, a man in his 60s with calloused hands and a sun-weathered face, stepped out of the truck and made his way to the pump. Troy's eyes glinted with mischief as he spotted the farmer. He nudged his right-hand man, Jake, and jerked his chin toward Earl. "Look what we have here, boys. A relic from the past." The gang erupted in laughter, their voices carrying across the gas station. Earl glanced in their direction, his expression unreadable, before focusing on filling up his tank. Little did the bikers know that their actions would soon set in motion a chain of events that would teach them a lesson they would never forget. The old farm truck, unassuming as it might appear, held a secret that would change everything. As Earl filled his tank, the bikers continued their mockery. They circled the old truck, pointing out every dent and rust spot, their laughter growing louder with each jab. "Hey, old man!" Troy called out, swaggering up to Earl. "You sure this heap of junk can still run? Looks like it belongs in a museum." Earl remained silent, his weathered face betraying no emotion. He replaced the gas nozzle and screwed the cap back onto his tank, his movements deliberate and unhurried. The lack of response only fueled Troy's ego. He grabbed a tire iron from his bike and sauntered over to the farm truck. With a wicked grin, he tapped the metal against the truck's side, producing a dull clang. "Hear that, boys? This rust bucket is barely holding together. I bet it can't even make it out of this gas station without falling apart." The gang roared with laughter, their voices echoing across the lot. Some of them joined in, kicking the tires and rattling the truck's doors. Earl, having finished his task, turned to face the bikers. His blue eyes, usually filled with kindness, now held a steely glint. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a battered flip phone. "You boys might want to think twice before messing with a farmer's truck," he said, his voice low and steady. "You never know who might be watching." With that, he dialed a number and held the phone to his ear, his gaze never leaving Troy's face. The bikers exchanged puzzled glances, unsure of what to make of the farmer's cryptic words. Troy scoffed, tossing the tire iron back onto his bike. "What are you gonna do, old man? Call the cops? We run this town." But as Earl spoke into the phone, his words carried a weight that sent a chill down Troy's spine. "It's Earl. We've got some troublemakers at the gas station. You know what to do." Minutes ticked by as the bikers lounged around the gas station, still snickering at Earl's expense. Troy leaned against his motorcycle, his eyes fixed on the old farmer who had retreated to the side of his truck. Suddenly, the distant rumble of engines shattered the afternoon calm. At first, the bikers paid no attention, assuming it was just another vehicle passing through town. But as the noise grew louder, they exchanged curious glances. From the horizon, a convoy of vehicles emerged, kicking up dust as they barreled down the road. Massive farm trucks, their beds laden with hay bales and agricultural equipment, led the charge. Behind them, off-road vehicles with oversized tires and reinforced frames followed in tight formation. Bringing up the rear were powerful semi-trucks, their chrome grills glinting in the sunlight. The bikers watched in stunned silence as the convoy rolled into the gas station, surrounding them from all sides. The vehicles came to a stop, their engines idling with a menacing growl. Doors swung open, and a group of men stepped out. They were farmers, ranchers, and truckers, their faces weathered by years of hard work under the sun. Some wore flannel shirts and jeans, while others donned military-style fatigues. They moved with purpose, their eyes fixed on the bikers. Earl emerged from behind his truck, a smile playing on his lips. He walked up to the leader of the group, a burly man with a graying beard and a steely gaze. "Thanks for coming, Joe," Earl said, clasping the man's hand in a firm shake. "These fellas were just leaving." Joe nodded, his eyes scanning the bikers. "Heard you had some trouble, Earl. Figured we'd come and lend a hand." Troy, his bravado faltering, took a step back. The realization dawned on him that they had underestimated the old farmer. These weren't just ordinary farmers, they were a brotherhood, united by their love for the land and their commitment to protecting their own. As the farmers and truckers surrounded the bikers, Troy felt his grip on the situation slipping away. The once laughing gang members now stood frozen, their eyes darting nervously between the imposing vehicles and the steadfast men who had arrived to back up Earl. Joe, the leader of the farming cooperative, stepped forward. His weathered face held a mix of authority and righteous anger. He fixed his gaze on Troy, his voice low and steady. "You boys picked the wrong farmer to mess with," Joe said, his words carrying the weight of a lifetime spent defending his land and his people. "Earl here is one of us. And when you mess with one of us, you mess with all of us." The bikers shifted uneasily, their earlier bravado replaced by a growing sense of unease. They had never encountered a group like this before, a community so tightly knit that they would drop everything to come to the aid of one of their own. Troy, desperate to salvage his reputation, tried to muster up some defiance. "We were just having a little fun," he said, his voice lacking its usual swagger. "No harm done." Earl shook his head, a hint of disappointment in his eyes. "Fun at the expense of others is no fun at all, son. It's time you learned some respect." Joe nodded in agreement. "You have two choices here, Troy. You can apologize to Earl and leave town with your tail between your legs. Or you can face the consequences of disrespecting our community." The bikers glanced at each other, the gravity of their situation sinking in. They had always relied on intimidation to get their way, but now they found themselves outmatched by men who knew the land, the roads, and how to handle far more than just farm equipment. Troy, his pride warring with his sense of self-preservation, hesitated for a moment. The weight of the farmers' gazes bore down on him, and he realized that there was only one way out of this predicament. With a heavy sigh, he turned to Earl, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry, sir. It won't happen again." As the words of apology left Troy's lips, a tense silence settled over the gas station. The farmers and truckers exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of surprise and satisfaction. They had expected resistance, perhaps even a fight, but Troy's submission caught them off guard. Earl studied the biker leader, his eyes searching for sincerity. He had seen his fair share of false apologies over the years, but something in Troy's demeanor told him that this was different. The arrogance had drained from the young man's face, replaced by a flicker of genuine remorse. After a moment, Earl nodded, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Apology accepted, son. Let this be a lesson to you and your friends. Respect goes a long way in these parts." Joe, still standing tall beside Earl, addressed the bikers. "Now, I suggest you boys hit the road. And remember, if you ever find yourselves in trouble out there, you know who to call. We take care of our own, but we also believe in second chances." Troy, his shoulders slumped, nodded in understanding. He signaled to his gang, and they slowly made their way back to their motorcycles. The roar of engines filled the air as they kicked their bikes to life, the sound now tinged with a newfound humility. As the bikers rode out of town, the farmers and truckers watched them go, a sense of unity and pride swelling in their chests. They had shown the power of their community, the strength that lay in their bonds. Earl turned to his friends, his eyes shining with gratitude. "I can't thank you all enough for coming out here today. It means the world to know that I have you in my corner." Joe clapped a hand on Earl's shoulder, a grin spreading across his face. "That's what family is for, Earl. We look out for each other, no matter what." With that, the farmers and truckers began to disperse, their vehicles rumbling back onto the roads they knew so well. The old farm truck, once mocked and ridiculed, now stood as a symbol of the unbreakable spirit that bound this community together. In the days that followed the confrontation at the gas station, a newfound sense of unity and purpose swept through the farming community. News of the bikers' humiliation spread like wildfire, and the locals couldn't help but feel a swell of pride in their tight-knit group. Earl, now hailed as a hero among his peers, found himself at the center of attention. Neighbors he had known for years stopped by his farm to shake his hand and offer their support. Even the younger generation, who had grown up hearing stories of Earl's quiet strength, looked at him with a newfound respect. As the community buzzed with excitement, an idea began to take root. Joe, the leader of the farming cooperative, called a meeting at the local community center. Farmers, ranchers, and truckers from all over the county gathered, their faces etched with curiosity and anticipation. "Friends," Joe began, his voice carrying through the crowded room. "What happened at the gas station was a reminder of the power we hold when we stand together. But it's not enough to just react when trouble comes knocking. We need to be proactive in building a stronger, more resilient community." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the audience. They had all witnessed the challenges that came with life in a small rural town, the struggle to keep their farms afloat, the dwindling population as young people left for the city, and the constant threat of outside forces seeking to exploit their way of life. Joe continued, his eyes sparkling with determination. "I propose we start a community garden, right here in the heart of our town. A place where we can come together, work side by side, and grow something beautiful. It'll be a symbol of our unity, our resilience, and our hope for the future." The room erupted in applause, the energy palpable. Earl, sitting in the front row, felt a surge of emotion. He had always known that his community was special, but seeing them come together like this, ready to build something new, filled him with a sense of pride and purpose. The idea of the community garden quickly took hold, and the farming cooperative wasted no time in putting their plan into action. They secured a plot of land in the center of town, a vacant lot that had once been home to a thriving family farm. Volunteers poured in from every corner of the county, armed with shovels, rakes, and a fierce determination to make their vision a reality. They worked tirelessly, tilling the soil, planting seeds, and tending to the delicate shoots that soon began to sprout from the earth. Earl found himself at the heart of the project, his weathered hands guiding the younger volunteers as they learned the secrets of coaxing life from the soil. He taught them about the importance of patience, of nurturing the land with care and respect, and of the joy that came from watching something grow. As the garden flourished, so too did the spirit of the community. The once vacant lot became a hub of activity, a place where neighbors gathered to share stories, swap recipes, and marvel at the fruits of their labor. Children played among the rows of vegetables, their laughter mingling with the buzzing of bees and the rustling of leaves in the breeze. But the garden was more than just a place of beauty and togetherness. It also served as a powerful symbol of the community's resilience in the face of adversity. When a severe drought threatened to wither the crops, the farmers and truckers rallied together, working round the clock to keep the garden alive. They hauled water from distant wells, set up irrigation systems, and prayed for rain. Through their tireless efforts, the garden survived, a testament to the strength and determination of the people who had built it. And as the first harvest approached, the community came together once more to celebrate the fruits of their labor. They gathered in the heart of the garden, surrounded by the bounty they had nurtured with their own hands. As they shared a meal beneath the stars, Earl looked around at the faces of his friends and neighbors, his heart swelling with pride and gratitude. They had created something truly special, a living embodiment of the unbreakable bonds that held their community together. As the success of the community garden spread, it caught the attention of the local media. Journalists from the county newspaper arrived to document the remarkable transformation that had taken place in the heart of the small rural town. They interviewed the volunteers, capturing their stories of hard work, dedication, and the profound impact the garden had on their lives. Earl found himself in the spotlight once more, his quiet wisdom and humble nature shining through in every word he spoke. "This garden is more than just a patch of dirt," he told the reporters, his eyes glistening with emotion. "It's a symbol of what we can achieve when we come together, when we put our differences aside and work towards a common goal. It's a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is always hope, always a reason to keep pushing forward." The article, published on the front page of the newspaper, spread like wildfire. People from neighboring towns and cities read about the incredible community that had risen from the ashes of adversity, and they were inspired to follow in their footsteps. Visitors began to flock to the small town, eager to see the garden for themselves and to learn from the wisdom of the farmers and truckers who had made it all possible. They marveled at the lush greenery, the vibrant colors of the flowers, and the tangible sense of unity that permeated every inch of the space. As the community welcomed these newcomers, they saw an opportunity to share their knowledge and their values with the wider world. They organized workshops and seminars, teaching people from all walks of life about the importance of sustainable farming, of building strong communities, and of never giving up in the face of challenges. Through these efforts, the small rural town became a beacon of hope and inspiration, a shining example of what was possible when people came together in the spirit of cooperation and compassion. And at the heart of it all, the old farm truck stood proud, a reminder of the humble beginnings that had sparked a movement of transformation and renewal. As the community garden continued to thrive and the town's reputation grew, it attracted the attention of a group of investors from the city. They saw the potential for profit in the small rural town, and they arrived with grand plans to turn it into a tourist destination. At first, the community was wary of the outsiders and their intentions. They had worked hard to build something special, something that belonged to them, and they were reluctant to see it exploited for the sake of money. But the investors were persistent, and they made promises that were hard to resist. They offered to fund the expansion of the garden, to build new infrastructure and amenities that would make the town more attractive to visitors. They spoke of the jobs that would be created, the economic boost that would come from the influx of tourists. Some members of the community, dazzled by the prospect of prosperity, began to waver in their resolve. They argued that the town needed to adapt, to embrace change if it was to survive in the modern world. But Earl and Joe, the leaders of the farming cooperative, remained steadfast in their opposition. They knew that the true value of the garden lay not in its potential for profit, but in the spirit of community and resilience that it had fostered. They called a meeting, inviting the entire town to come and voice their opinions. The community center was packed to the rafters, the air thick with tension and anticipation. Earl took the stage, his voice steady and clear. "Friends," he began, "we have built something extraordinary here. Something that belongs to all of us. The garden is more than just a plot of land, it's a symbol of our unity, our strength, and our hope for the future." He looked out at the sea of faces, seeing the uncertainty and the fear in their eyes. "I know that the promise of money and prosperity can be tempting," he continued. "But we must ask ourselves, at what cost? Are we willing to sacrifice the very thing that makes us special, that makes us who we are, for the sake of a quick profit?" Joe stepped forward, his voice ringing with conviction. "We have faced challenges before," he reminded them. "We have weathered droughts and storms, we have stood together in the face of adversity. And we have always emerged stronger, more united than ever." As the two leaders spoke, a murmur of agreement began to ripple through the crowd. People nodded their heads, their eyes shining with renewed determination. In the end, the community made their decision. They would not sell out, would not allow their garden to be turned into a mere tourist attraction. They would continue to nurture it, to grow it, to make it a symbol of everything they held dear. The investors left, disappointed but understanding. They had underestimated the power of a community that stood together, that believed in something greater than mere profit. And as the town celebrated their victory, Earl looked out at the garden, at the fruits of their labor, and he knew that they had made the right choice. They had preserved something precious, something that would endure long after they were gone, a legacy of hope, resilience, and the unbreakable bonds of community. In the wake of their decision to reject the investors' offer, the community found themselves at a crossroads. They had preserved their garden, their way of life, but they knew that they could not rest on their laurels. The world was changing, and they needed to adapt if they were to thrive in the years to come. Once again, Joe and Earl took the lead. They proposed a plan to expand the garden, to turn it into a hub of sustainable agriculture and education. They envisioned a place where people from all over the world could come to learn about the importance of community, of working with the land, and of building a better future. The town rallied behind the idea, pouring their energy and resources into making it a reality. They built greenhouses and classrooms, they brought in experts to teach workshops on organic farming and sustainable living. They created a network of local businesses that supported the garden, from farm-to-table restaurants to artisanal craft shops. As the garden grew, so too did the town's sense of purpose and pride. They saw themselves not just as a small rural community, but as a model for a new way of living, one that valued cooperation over competition, sustainability over exploitation, and the power of the human spirit over the lure of easy profits. And at the heart of it all, the old farm truck remained a constant presence. It had been there from the beginning, a symbol of the humble origins that had given rise to something extraordinary. Now, it served as a reminder of the journey they had taken, and of the boundless potential that lay ahead. As Earl looked out over the thriving garden, he felt a sense of deep contentment. He knew that the road ahead would not be easy, that there would be challenges and obstacles to overcome. But he also knew that they had something that could never be bought or sold, a sense of belonging, of purpose, and of hope. And with that knowledge, he knew that they could face whatever the future might bring, secure in the strength of their community and the power of their dreams. Years passed, and the community garden continued to flourish. It had become not just a source of fresh produce and education, but a symbol of the town's resilience and unity. People came from far and wide to learn from the farmers and truckers, to experience the magic of a place where anything seemed possible. But as the garden grew, so too did the challenges it faced. Climate change brought unpredictable weather patterns, with droughts and floods becoming more frequent and more severe. Pests and diseases threatened the crops, forcing the farmers to adapt their methods and seek out new solutions. Through it all, Earl and Joe remained steadfast in their commitment to the garden and to the community that had built it. They worked tirelessly, side by side with their neighbors, to find ways to overcome each new obstacle. They experimented with new crop varieties, with innovative irrigation systems, and with natural pest control methods. And as they worked, they began to see a change in the world around them. Other communities, inspired by their example, began to build their own gardens and to embrace the values of sustainability and cooperation. A movement was born, one that spread like wildfire across the country and beyond. As the garden's 10th anniversary approached, the town came together to plan a celebration. They invited people from all over the world to come and see what they had built, to share in the joy and the pride of a community that had dared to dream big. On the day of the celebration, Earl stood before the gathered crowd, his eyes shining with emotion. He looked out at the sea of faces, at the people who had become his family, and he knew that he had been a part of something truly special. "My friends," he began, his voice trembling with pride, "we have shown the world what is possible when we come together, when we believe in each other and in ourselves. We have built something beautiful, something that will endure long after we are gone." As Earl's words echoed across the gathered crowd, a hush fell over the garden. People looked at one another, their eyes shining with the realization of all they had accomplished. In that moment, they saw the true power of their community, the strength that had carried them through every trial and tribulation. And then, from somewhere in the crowd, a voice rang out. It was Troy, the once arrogant biker who had learned the hard way the value of respect and humility. He stepped forward, his head held high, and addressed the assembled throng. "I stand here today as a changed man," he began, his voice steady and clear. "I came to this town thinking I was better than all of you, that I could take what I wanted without consequence. But you showed me the error of my ways, and for that, I will always be grateful." He turned to Earl and Joe, his eyes brimming with tears. "You taught me the true meaning of community, of what it means to be a part of something greater than myself. And now, I want to give back, to help in any way I can." As Troy spoke, others began to step forward, their voices joining his in a chorus of gratitude and determination. They pledged their support to the garden, to the town, and to the values that had brought them all together. Earl and Joe looked out at the sea of faces, their hearts swelling with pride and love. They had always known that the garden was more than just a plot of land, more than just a collection of plants and vegetables. It was a living, breathing testament to the power of the human spirit, to the idea that anything was possible when people came together in common purpose. As the celebration continued, the old farm truck sat quietly in the corner, its rusted frame a reminder of the humble beginnings that had given rise to something extraordinary. And as the sun began to set over the garden, casting a golden glow over the land, Earl knew that their story was just beginning, that the seeds they had planted would continue to grow and flourish for generations to come. In the years that followed, the community garden became a beacon of hope and inspiration for people around the world. Its story spread far and wide, a testament to the power of unity, resilience, and the indomitable human spirit. Visitors came from every corner of the globe to witness the miracle of the garden, to learn from the wisdom of the farmers and truckers who had made it all possible. They marveled at the lush greenery, the vibrant colors of the flowers, and the sense of peace and purpose that seemed to permeate every inch of the soil. But the garden was more than just a tourist attraction, more than just a novelty to be admired from afar. It was a living, breathing classroom, a place where people could come to learn the secrets of sustainable agriculture, of community building, and of the true meaning of happiness and fulfillment. Under the guidance of Earl, Joe, and the countless volunteers who had poured their hearts and souls into the project, the garden continued to evolve and grow. They experimented with new crops and new methods, always seeking ways to work in harmony with the land and with each other. And as the years passed, the garden became a model for communities around the world. People saw in its success a template for their own dreams, a roadmap for building a better, more sustainable future. But perhaps the greatest legacy of the garden was the impact it had on the lives of those who had built it. The farmers and truckers, the volunteers and visitors, all had been touched by the magic of the place, by the sense of purpose and belonging that it had given them. They had learned that true wealth lay not in material possessions or fleeting fame, but in the bonds of community, in the simple joys of working the land and sharing in the fruits of their labor. And as they looked to the future, they knew that the garden would always be a part of them, a reminder of the incredible things that were possible when people came together in love and understanding. As the sun rose over the community garden, casting its golden light across the rows of vegetables and flowers, Earl and Joe stood side by side, surveying the fruits of their labor. The years had been long and the challenges many, but they had never wavered in their commitment to the land and to the people who called it home. They thought back to the early days, to the moment when the bikers had first rolled into town, and to the chain of events that had led them to this place. They remembered the fear and the uncertainty, the moments of doubt and despair. But they also remembered the triumphs, the small victories that had sustained them through the darkest times. They remembered the first harvest, the joy on the faces of the children as they bit into the ripe tomatoes and crisp cucumbers. They remembered the workshops and the classes, the look of wonder in the eyes of the visitors as they learned the secrets of the soil. And most of all, they remembered the people, the incredible tapestry of souls that had come together to make the garden what it was. The farmers and the truckers, the volunteers and the students, the young and the old, all united by a common purpose and a shared love for the land. As they looked out over the garden, Earl and Joe knew that their work was not finished, that there would always be new challenges to face and new dreams to pursue. But they also knew that they had built something that would endure, something that would continue to grow and flourish long after they were gone. And so, with a smile on their faces and a song in their hearts, they set out to meet the new day, secure in the knowledge that they had been a part of something truly extraordinary. The community garden had taught them the true meaning of hope, of resilience, and of the incredible power of the human spirit to overcome any obstacle and to build a better world, one seed at a time.